Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to have you today, or have you with us today for our conversation from urgent to future, charting a course for AI in K-12. We'll get started in just a moment. While folks are joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Welcome in, folks. Got some Michigan representation in the chat. I'm joining from Charlotte, North Carolina, NYC, Baltimore, Maryland, Massachusetts. Hey, AJ, glad to see your name on the chat list. Awesome, folks. We'll give everyone just one more minute and then we'll get started. Newport, Rhode Island. All right, folks, as people are still coming in, we'll let them add their introductions to the chat as well. But I have incredible panelists that are joining me today. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for the conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name is Michael Ham, and I'm a partner at the Learning Accelerator, where I lead research and policy work focused on building a more effective, equitable, and forward-looking education system. I'm joined today by a few brilliant colleagues, Megan Benet, Daniela Bocanegra, and Beth Holland, who are helping moderate the chat and support questions and answers throughout today's session. If at any point you have a question for me, for our panelists, for the whole group, please feel free to either use the Q&A function or just throw it into the chat. My colleagues will be sure to grab it from there. We are, or at the Learning Accelerator, we've been thinking a lot about what this moment means for public education. AI has entered classrooms and systems fast, bringing both big questions and even bigger possibilities. However, the field is currently at risk of treating AI like a short-term challenge to manage rather than a long-term opportunity to reimagine how we support student learning. That brings us to the question that we're holding at the center of today's conversation. What would it take for AI to transform K-12 learning at the systems level, not just automate what we already do? The question is guiding our work, and it's the lens that we've used to shape the resource suite that we're launching today as part of this conversation. It's also a question that our panelists have been wrestling with in powerful ways, from the classroom to the district office to research, design, and support. For those of you who are newer to our work, the Learning Accelerator is a national nonprofit that works to ensure that every student receives an effective, engaging, and equitable education. We focus our work in three core areas. The first, setting a shared agenda for change in the field. The second, accelerating progress on key learning priorities. And third, building capacity for systems to learn and improve together. We're also excited to share that the Learning Accelerator has recently merged with the Aurora Institute. This merger expands our collective capacity to drive systems level change and transformation across the sector. We'll be sharing more information soon, including our new name and our joint strategy. Stay tuned for updates in the coming days and weeks. This webinar and the resources that we're launching today are part of our broader exponential learning initiative, which aims to help the field respond to and shape the future of learning, particularly as AI and other emerging technologies transform what's possible. As part of this initiative, we've been conducting research alongside schools, districts, and national partners to better understand how AI is being used and where the field needs support. That research led us directly to the work of Dr. Saba Kidwai, Dr. Kelly Mae Vollmer, and Tiffany Norton, whose stories and strategies were featured in our white paper. And it also connects to Jessica Paulson's leadership in the R Accelerating Adoption Network, which is a peer learning cohort of systems and organizations who are working to scale promising innovations in the service of deeper learning. Through our research, partnerships, and ongoing conversations with leaders across the country, we've surfaced a set of insights that we think are essential for understanding this moment. The first, there is real momentum. Educators, school systems, partners, they're all actively exploring how AI might support deeper learning, better feedback, and offer more personalized support for students. However, much of this work is happening in silos, through isolated pilots, scattered policies. It's happening without coherence that's needed to drive sustainable system-wide change. Second, and critically, AI is not just a technology challenge, it's a systems challenge. We're seeing promising ideas run into outdated policies, disconnected infrastructure, fragmented support structures that weren't built for system-wide transformation. This includes things like instructional time policies, traditional accountability systems, and even professional learning opportunities. Third, the field is asking for more than just tools and guidance. There's a growing call for coherence, for a shared vision, clear expectations, and aligned supports that enable educators and leaders to move forward with confidence and purpose. These insights are shaping how we think about the role of AI in education, and they're central to the work of the panelists that you're about to hear from. We're so excited today to be joined by an incredible panel of leaders whose work is driving the field at the intersection of those three big ideas. Each of these panelists is directly engaged in the work of building capacity, advancing equity, and setting a vision for how AI can improve student learning. With that, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit about how their work relates to AI. And I'll start it off with Dr. Saba Kiwai.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with everyone today. So my work with AI really comes from the lens of being a student. I always say how I graduated in 2007. And at that time, it was sort of the iPhone was the really big change at that time, the app economy. And I really got left with this question was, why did some people graduate feeling prepared at the cutting edge, building the technologies and businesses and experiences that everybody else will soon adopt? And a majority of others kind of are left as consumers really instead of creators. And about a decade ago, I began looking at what would be next, and we knew that would be AI. And that's sort of what brings me here today is, how do we make sure we have the resources, we have the knowledge, we have the research to be able to let us know what we can do to help today's generation. And so, yeah, that's what I'm excited to chat with you about today.
Awesome. Thank you, Saba. Next, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kelly Mae Palmer.
Hi, good morning, everyone. At least morning for us. I'm in Southern California, and it's great to be here with all of you. As Saba mentioned, I am the very proud superintendent of Desert Sands Unified School District. We're located near Palm Springs, California, if that gives you a little bit of a location assistance there. And I would say that two things really unique to the work that we're doing, and in particular, my work in the AI realm. One is that I'm a former chief technology officer turned superintendent. So I'm very fortunate to work with our current chief technology officer, Tiffany Norton, who allows me to put my spoon in her soup bowl all the time, which is great, which really lends to that second piece. And I think you'll hear this as we go through. My job is to really clear the way and to make sure she has the resources and everything she needs to do the amazing work that she does.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And I'll turn it over to Tiffany next.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tiffany Norton. I'm the Chief Innovation and Information Officer for Desert Sands Unified. I'm very blessed to be able to work with Kelly every day. I'm a former teacher, former assistant principal and principal, and have just a passion for innovation and student data privacy, which kind of led me to this role. And AI, when AI first started kind of coming into the education space a couple years ago, Kelly and I had a conversation, and the fire was kind of lit to be at the front of that work. And so that's why I'm here. I'm also a self-proclaimed AI prompt wizard.
Love that. I will also proclaim that, Tiffany. You don't have to do it yourself. I believe that as well. And I will turn it over to our last panelist from our Accelerating Adoption Network and Leap Innovations, Jessica Paulson.
Thanks, Michael. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Jessica, and I serve as the President of Innovation and Impact at Leap Innovations. We are a national nonprofit based out of Chicago, and our mission is to transform education into a uniquely personal experience. We're working to make sure that every learner has an experience that will prepare, empower, and inspire them to ignite their unlimited potential. And we've been partnering with educators, schools, districts, and organizations since 2013 to reimagine learning and effectively leverage technology to support a teacher's ability to personalize learning in their classroom. Our LEAP learning framework is kind of the core driver of that work, and it was the first of its kind to define what personalized learning looks like from a student experience, where learning is focused on, led by, demonstrated by, and connected to each learner. And that research really guides our work in our three networks, including our AI education network, which is where we're supporting leaders and educators and districts to design responsible and effective AI integration plans and initiatives with a personalized learning lens, providing them kind of guidance for roadmaps, planning, implementation, professional learning, and really structured and values-aligned pilots where they can learn and scale what's working in their context. Super excited to be here and to join this conversation and learn from all the other fellow panelists about our different perspectives and experiences in this work.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you to each of you for being here and for the leadership that you're showing in this space. As we've all heard, this group is approaching AI from different angles and altitudes, but with a shared commitment to using it in the service of deeper, more equitable learning. Now that you've met our panelists, we're going to dive into our discussion. Today's conversation is going to follow four main themes. The first, vision and alignment, then educator readiness, equity and inclusion, and finally, system level supports. If at any point, again, you have any questions for one or any of our panelists, please submit it either using the chat or the QA feature, and my colleagues will get them onto our list for the Q&A section in just a moment. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for the actual conversation, just so that you all can see us a little bit better. And to help me frame my first question, one of the biggest themes that we've heard from our partners in this research was about the importance of having a clear instructional vision that guides the adoption of AI. Too often, systems start exploring tools or policies without stepping back to ask, what kind of learning are we actually trying to enable? So we're going to start there with a look at what it takes to move from scattered pilots and reactive guidance to more cohesive student-centered approach. With that, Kelly, I'd love to start with you. In Desert Sands, you've been working to build and communicate a clear vision for how AI fits into your broader instructional strategy. What has it looked like to move from early experimentation toward that kind of system-wide clarity? And what has helped your team make that shift? Oh, and you're on mute, Kelly.
I just noticed. Thank you so much. Really great question. I will say that moving from that experimental place to that system-wide clarity has really been very intentional work for us. We spent 2 solid years going slow to get ready to go fast, and it has really taken off really back in May, and we're so excited about what the next school year will bring. But for us, I'll start by saying our work was really driven by our vision in Desert Sands, which is to successfully prepare every student for college, career, and life. And so for us, venturing into this realm of AI work and exposing our staff and our students and having very thoughtful, well-laid plans was not an option for us because we know that AI is not going away. The toothpaste is not going to go back in the tube. And so we can't, with confidence, say we're preparing students for college, career, and life if we're not preparing them for a world where AI will be in abundance. And so it really is a moral imperative for us. And so I think because we're driven by our vision, that really led us to have great confidence in a space, not that we knew all the answers, but confidence to approach the work where a lot of people, and understandably so, have felt overwhelmed and paralyzed and really not known what to do. So it really, that vision moving us was really a great propeller for our work. And then I'd say there's 3 things. If I had to really highlight 3 things that worked for us, I mentioned this in my introduction, but for me as a superintendent and for any of you in a like role out there, it was finding the resources that Tiffany needed to do her work. I think that chief technology officers, especially in the education realm across the US, are incredibly busy people that are dealing with urgent requests all the time, right? And Tiffany, I would say, is one of the top CTOs in the nation. And so I'm so excited to work with her. But she is also one of those people that is incredibly busy and innovative. And so I knew I needed to find the resources for her to help her to do that work, which is where Saba came in. I saw her at a conference and I was like, oh no, this is the person, and texted Tiffany right away. I think the second thing for us is that we really didn't approach it, and you mentioned this, Michael, we didn't approach it from a let's create a policy. We approached this from this is an opportunity for organizational change led by our vision. And so, sure, do we have to make sure that we have data privacy and all those things in place? Yes, and we do. But it really for us was about what's our vision for education and how will this impact student learning and those outcomes. So that was that second thing that really led us. And so of course we have to have clarity with that. And then I think third is we were really purposeful because we looked at it as an organizational change initiative to ensure that it included every single person in our community. So we worked with parents, we worked with students, we worked with classified staff, certificated staff, really ensuring for us in Desert Sands, we are all about getting rid of silos at every chance that we can. So this is just one more way that we were able to do that work. So I know Tiffany can get a little bit more in the weeds for you, but those are kind of the big overarching things that drove us from that experimentation to that system-wide clarity.
Tiffany, do you want to dig in there, or I have follow-ups if not?
I can, but I'm gonna dig in my question so I can hang tight.
Absolutely. I think my follow-up question there, right, is you all had a really strong instructional vision to start. But then you also have these really, like, you built out and sought out resources, additional folks who shared that vision, who shared, elements of that vision, and you went back to your community to ask, like, does this vision actually align with like what you all are doing? Can you talk a little bit about how, like, whether that vision for student experiences evolved over time, or was it really just was it different? What came up as part of these conversations as you were building your coalition, talking to your folks on the ground? Like, what changed?
I can start and then Tiffany can jump in. I will say, I think like everyone, we were hearing a lot of voices right off the bat, right? And so a lot of things sounded appealing. One of the greatest things that I think that Saba did for us, which I would recommend for anyone, is she interviewed Tiffany and I and really asked a lot of probing questions of what our vision was, which made sure that we were looking full vision across the district, not just in a small little minute portion. And then throughout our process, they say things and she'd draw us back and she'd say, okay, but when I asked you what your vision was, that doesn't align with your vision, which kept us really anchored in what we really wanted. I think what has helped us, we've had a lot of Q&A sessions. So we've heard from staff members, we've had fireside chats with parents. Tiffany did a great job, and Saba helped. We led 2 days with students, pulling in over 100 students from across our district and hearing their voices on what mattered to them and what they wanted us to know about AI and how they thought AI should be used in the classroom. And so certainly as we did those things, it helped refine what our ultimate guidance document looked like.
I think the important piece too, to piggyback on everything that Kelly just said, is we continue to be and started with being grounded in who we are as a district, and that led the work. So our mission, vision, values, and our portrait of a graduate competencies are woven throughout our AI guidance document and through the RISE framework, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it really does, it's the lens that we're looking at AI with. And so we didn't want to get away from who we've already established we are as a district. And we have these 6 portrait of a graduate competencies that's who we are putting out into the world when students graduate, right? That's our goal. And so anything that we do really should be layered upon who we are as a district. And so I would say to anybody who's listening that you need to, my personal opinion, you need to make sure that the work that you're doing around AI is grounded in who you are as a district. It cannot be separate from, and it can't be just an add-on that you're kind of layering in on the top. And I think honestly, that's why we've been so successful. One, we have Saba to keep us kind of in the rails of who we are, because there have been times where we've had hard conversations about that. But we come back to who we are with our mission, vision, values, and portrait of a graduate. Our tagline happens to be "The future is here," and it couldn't be more appropriate.
It was that before the AI?
It was that before, yeah.
I love that. No, I think that's, I'm hearing a couple of things there, right? Like, one, making sure that your vision for technology is driven by your vision for teaching and learning, not the other way around, and that the people who are leading that work have the ability to actually sit in those conversations and really like let creating that space for Tiffany to drive an instructional conversation or talk about instruction rather than be answering help desk tickets all day. That's not the case for everyone, right? Like, that's just, we know that's the reality in some school districts. And you can have a vision and a strong like sense of identity, but it's also helpful to have a third party oftentimes to like help you see those things clearly and hold you accountable to the things that you're setting out. Those are all great. Tiffany, just for the sake of time, I am going to transition us to our next question, which is also going to be for you. One thing that another strong through line in our research is that educator confidence and support either make or break AI implementation. I'm wondering, Tiffany, what strategies have helped your team build readiness among teachers and ensure that AI is being used thoughtfully and effectively?
So this is something that was extremely important to me from the beginning, not just for teachers, but for all staff. We took a whole staff approach and we knew that was going to be different. Our transportation department is going to need a little bit of different support than personnel, than our classroom teachers, than even our instructional coaches. And so I knew that we had to have a lens to support a little bit of everybody. And year one, we really just looked at education, educating ourselves, educating our teams, and we had some AI playgrounds, which were really phenomenal. And people just came. It was a very low stress, low pressure environment. We started the day saying, hey, we're learning too. So if you have a question, if we can answer it, we will. If not, we'll figure it out together. And we had different AI tools and just said, explore. Here's a choice board. If you have questions, let us know. It was a time and a place for anyone who was interested to come in and have a space. And we did a couple of those, and it was so, so great. We also made a decision super early. And the first time I heard Saba speak, Kelly had texted me and said, you have to look this lady up. And I was like, okay, I will. And then I did. I looked at her website and I was like, that's cool. And then I got to hear her speak. And I was like, yes, I need her on my team. And I'm going to figure out how to make that happen because she has an approach that we took on too, which is human first. And it really is about the humanness and not about AI and using AI as a teammate. And so we went in with that. We started with, which now seems like such a long time ago, but we started with the 5 big ideas of AI. AI for K-12.org has 5 big ideas. We did a whole presentation again for anybody who wanted to come. We served dinner. They could come and we had a little presentation on that just to get the conversation started and so that we could kind of weed and pull through what hesitations were out there. Because if I didn't know what the barriers were, I couldn't find a way through the barriers. And so I needed to hear from people. And then we had some student agency days. We took students through the 5 big ideas of AI also and did one of my most favorite activities ever. We asked them some questions and got some feedback on a gallery walk and had them walk around and see. And my favorite question was, what do you wish admin and teachers knew about AI? And my favorite answer, and I wish I knew who said it, but I promised them it would all be anonymous so that they could be honest, was we know when you use it. And so, don't tell us not to use it if you're using it. And I was like, thank you, like that from the mouth of a student, right, who was just really passionate. And so fast forward to year 2, and the goal of year 2 was to be strategic and intentional. So we did partner with Designing Schools and Saba, and she is my strategic partner, and we picked her on purpose. She interviewed us. We also interviewed her and had a conversation, clicked right off the bat, thank goodness. But what I told Kelly and my boss, the assistant soup of ed services, was I need someone for really selfishly for me so that I can keep AI at the top of the list. Otherwise, it'll continue to fall and I'll get to it when I can get to it, right? When I'm putting out fires and doing the other things that are part of my role. And so having a strategic partner has really helped keep the work at the forefront of what we're doing and really my accountability partner too. And so with that, we've been really focused, and the goal for last year was to create resources and then our AI guidance. And through our AI guidance, we also have the RISE framework. With that idea of keeping humans first, we want to make sure that we give the humans in our organization, whether you're a leader, a learner, or an educator, that decision-making framework so that no matter what experience you're in or what situation you're in, you have that framework in your tool belt so that you can make informed decisions on your use of AI. And so that RISE framework, which stands for respect, integrity, support, and empathy, comes with questions and scenarios and just a wealth of resources for leaders, learners, and educators to be able to use as they're talking with either leaders with their educators, educators with their students, or students just to use on their own. But again, tied back to our mission, vision, values, and portrait of a graduate, I can't stress that enough. All of the work is grounded in who we are as a district, which I think makes it more personal and really helps kind of drive that message. And then something that I don't want to overlook either is Kelly's on this call and I'm really lucky to have her because I could have launched this initiative and it would have been okay, but I have the support of the top. And so we did a launch video in May, and it was myself, the assistant sup of ed services, and the superintendent in a video, and Kelly's voice coming through saying, here's what we want from you. Here's what we expect, right? We expect you to start exploring the resources, reach out. That comes with weight behind it. And so everyone in the organization now knows that this is not just a technology initiative. This is a Desert Sands initiative, and this is the way of future ready learning, right? And so looking to the future, if I can, because I'm really excited about it, moving into this next school year and beyond, our goal is AI literacy across the organization. And so if you've not read the Microsoft Work Trend Index for 2025, it's a great read. I highly recommend it. But they talk about the phases of organizational AI transformation, and there are 3 of them. But I'm going to talk really quickly about the first 2, because our goal this year is to move everybody from phase 1 to phase 2. And so phase 1 is just a human with your assistant. That's you just using your AI tool of choice, right? As a teammate, you have one AI assistant, very basic. We want to escalate and kind of elevate everybody to phase 2, which is human agent teams. And so that's when people become agent bosses. And I love that. But everyone is going to become the boss or the coach of their AI team. And it's AI bosses are where humans become managers of one or more agents. And so you're kind of setting up AI teams, different AI teams to do different tasks to free yourself up for that design thinking and moving through so that you can do the work that is also super important. But who, the question that Saba always asks is, who would you hire if you could hire anybody? And what would they do? And how can you create a gem or a GPT that will be able to do some of that work for you? Again, with human oversight and human input. But how can you help and build your own team and your own capacity using AI as a tool? And then the one last thing I promise, scenarios. Scenarios and real world application is what I think last year took us to the next level and will continue to push us through. Is people have questions and they're afraid, and you have those people who are ready and willing to go and they're just excited about it, and then you have some people who are a little more hesitant and aren't sure. And Kelly made a great analogy that AI is like for English teachers is like the calculator was for math teachers, right? And when we talk about cheating, there's a Stanford study that shows that the cheating percentage hasn't changed, all that much. So we can't use that as an excuse, but scenarios and real world application and just giving people the space and the time to explore and to build with scaffolds and with supports, that I think is what pushed us forward and is going to continue to push us to our goal of having human agent teams in our district.
Tiffany, thank you for all of that. A couple of points that I want to elevate are just like starting slow or like going slow to go fast at the beginning, but feeling that imperative of we have to prepare students for this. This is a reality that they're going to be facing. And so we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to talk to our people. And then from there, also being willing to chunk it out, right? You're not trying to go from phase 1 implementation of AI literacy all the way to phase 3. I think there's rightly, a lot of urgency around this work. And I think folks like potentially are trying to bite off or feeling the need to bite off more than they can chew because it feels like a wave. But what I really appreciate about what you just shared is that go slow to go fast, start with who you are, root all of your decisions there, and then chunk it out to make smaller steps possible and really just like approach it. And that goes back to that change management piece that you were talking about as well. Saba, I'm going to turn the conversation to you really quickly. A core tension that we've seen is that AI can either reinforce inequities or help close longstanding gaps. I'm wondering how you're seeing and helping set up schools to like approach this work in ways that are intentionally inclusive of all of these voices, right? Like Desert Sands as an example of going out and talking to their stakeholders, as well as ways that are responsive to the identities and needs of all the learners in the K-12 supports. So I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I feel like, and it was so funny. I was just talking to Beth Holland about this morning, but I think it's so important to remember that like that question is not a question that's exclusive to AI. And I think when we have these conversations and we remember that, it allows us to, I think, then, be vulnerable enough to be like, okay, what were some of the missing pieces that we weren't able to follow through on last time that almost like now we're being given a second chance? Okay, what can we do this time so that we kind of don't repeat that? Like, I think it's very rare in life that people get second chances at like systems design, right? So when you think about sort of whether it's a crisis with social media or like any of the other challenges we see as a result of not having done the work, maybe to the degree that we would have liked to have done in the past 2 decades, it's almost like every single person has a moment to reset and hit like multiple birds with one stone when it comes to, okay, what practices do we need to teach and how do we need to think about things differently? And I think the research that we always go back to, or the paper that I always go back to, is the 2001 by Paul Outwell, where he says we don't have a digital divide, we have a digital use divide. That the basic bottom line challenge is that we keep putting more and more technology in without rethinking the actual tasks that we're asking students to engage in, and not just students, but like adults as well to engage in. And I always say the biggest challenge that I see right now is not so much that people can't learn the technology or that any of these other things that I think we give like just these all these terms to. It's just the bottom line that we have become so used to accepting things that we don't even like, that literally when you look at some of the things that people are fighting for, like grading 180 essays that like you literally don't even want to be doing, but that is what you are fighting for, even if it's something that you don't want. And so I think there's the moment we always say like, give people a chance to have a moment to really reflect on what it is they really believe they're here to do. Because, I always say, like, I don't believe we're here on earth to write emails all day long, sit at desks and screens with walking treadmills underneath us now to try to re-up our bodies and keep ourselves like healthy and fit. Or to be making slide decks all day long. Like that is just not like, it's a very modern concept that we engage with technology in this way. It's when you look at civilizations before, when you look at people that have strong communities, familial structures, and things like that. Like, that's just not the human work they're engaged in. And so I think giving people a chance to reset and really reconnect with what it is that you hope you could do before. I think we didn't engage in that question because, well, who's going to come and give that to me, right? Like, okay, well, if this is what I want and I don't want to grade those 180 essays and I want to be able to do all these other things, or yeah, I wish I could do X, Y, Z. Well, great, who's going to give that to me? And I think the reality was that, the answer wasn't there. But today it is, and is it there 100% for you? Probably not. But if you could get to 60% of what it is you wish you could be doing every day, like, why would you not want to embrace that? And so I go back to like, that is really to me the crux of the problem, is that until you don't do that, it's very hard for people to then think about what it is they want to be able to do next. I mean, I think, you all said it earlier when you said that, we start with tools and we start with all these things and we're just trying to sort of like put a band-aid, 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 but it's just like, crap, you take off the band-aid and you're like, like got a much bigger problem over here that I have to now go and solve for. So I think that's it. I think it's just change the task, and it starts with such a simple prompt, right? Like, this is what I'm doing. I want to do something different. Give me an idea. Give me some ideas for what that could be. Nobody has had that previously before in history at scale to which we do today, that you can just open up your computer and get that for you, literally for free. Like, there's not even a cost to this. So I would say that's sort of where we come from.
I appreciate that. Like starting with the what would free you up to actually make that wish. Like we had this vision of what we want to be doing with students, right? Or like the kind of teaching and learning, the ways that we want to interact within teaching and learning. But like before we can even get there, it's like what's holding us back, and like we have a real opportunity to appreciate that or to address it. I really appreciated your quote about how often in life do we get a second chance at systems redesign. That blew my mind actually. I was just thinking, yeah, you're right. Like that is the imperative of the moment. I do think one additional question I have here is like not just the adults, right? But like Tiffany and Kelly both spoke to like including students in this work. I'm wondering like what can you speak a little bit more about like your design process and what does it actually look like to bring student voice authentically into these conversations, particularly as a way to build more equity around how AI is being implemented?
For
And
me.
this is open to anyone, whoever wants to share.
I thought you were talking to Saba.
Sorry.
I think, Tiffany shared a great example. I mentioned it as well. So when we work with our students, we're asking them, what do you think we should know? How should AI be used? Tiffany shared one of the answers. My favorite answer for that day was the same question: what do you wish that teachers and administrators knew? And the student's response was, I wish teachers wouldn't worry so much about whether or not we were going to cheat, and they would understand if they create an authentic process for us to do during class, and then guided instruction when we go home utilizing AI, they're going to know if we cheated or not. And some of the best examples that I've seen, I know up in Peninsula School District up in Washington, they started their whole AI work with their high school English teachers because they were the most nervous about AI and what cheating might look like. And they've created some incredible processes for teachers to be able to use, where they do a writing prompt in class, and then the teacher themselves has created a chat bot for the student to work with specific parameters given to it. They give the student their work back with the feedback, assign them that AI counterpart, if you will, with an assignment to go home and revisions to do. And then when they come back, they have to bring a screenshot of the prompt, what the response was to the prompt, and their corrected work. So that whole process is very controlled, but it's teaching students how to utilize AI in a way that, back to Tiffany's point about being human-centered, it magnifies their own intelligence and magnifies their own creativity instead of replacing it. And that's what we don't want to see happen. We don't want to see AI replacing us. We want it to magnify the really great things that are already in us and in our students.
Love that. So we've heard a bit about how this work is happening in one district, right, in Desert Sands, and how Saba has been supporting that, and like from a national landscape lens as well. Jessica, I want to pivot toward your work really quickly. So your work is slightly different in that you're supporting lots of districts with lots of pilots and creating communities of practice around sort of similar ideas. One thing that we've heard is that across districts, even when there's strong interest in using AI to improve learning, the systems and supports to sustain that work just often aren't in place. I'm wondering, what does it look like with your work across multiple districts to put into place the conditions that are most important for enabling long-term progress around AI implementation? Like, what are those conditions that are coming up? What does that work actually look like? And what are folks responding most to in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you've got a great exemplar here in what Kelly and Tiffany has shared of what we see across many districts and systems that we're working with. And it's really rooted in this idea of coherence and human-centered design, and taking the time to take a step back so that we can build and implement this intentionally. AI is something that we call an arrival technology. So unlike other things that we have to choose and plan to roll out and make a plan to adopt, it just became available overnight. And a lot of folks have moved in the early phases to say, well, that means we need to make sure that everyone has access to these tools, and we need to have guidelines and policies in place, like you referred to earlier, Michael. But I think ultimately kind of having that process of how do we take a step back, how do we be intentional about what this looks like in our system to really transform and accelerate teaching and learning is the key here. And so there's a couple of themes that we've seen, and you've heard some good examples of here. That leadership commitment that we heard so loudly from Kelly, and the examples here is a key to this, that it's being embraced and set up as not just a tool, but really as a lever for district priorities and instructional goals. So a lot of the districts that we're working with are starting with their portrait of a graduate, they're starting with their school improvement priorities, and it's mapping AI as a tool to those, not just layering it on top of many other things on the to-do list. I think creating cross-functional spaces and steering committees where we're bringing together leadership, technology leaders, teaching and learning leaders, and educators to the table to really have those discussions of what are the use cases that are going to help us to do that? Where do we have needs or real goals in our classrooms that we haven't been able to reach with the traditional, tools that we have access to? Where do we feel most successful that we want to put more resources and power behind? And those places to play and explore and experiment with the technology to help illuminate what some of those opportunities are, have allowed folks to really set a roadmap that is deeply integrated and then co-design with educators, students, and other stakeholders at the table from the very beginning. We're often leading learner advisories where we're facilitating conversations between students and educators, grappling with some of those questions about academic integrity and guardrails and safety and durable skills and what the future looks like and what students know and want to be prepared for, as well as what our portraits of a graduate are defining as their future pathway. And so creating systems where we can do that learning together, but then in a bigger picture, how do we connect and share that and accelerate it across systems? And so we're convening some coalitions for human-centered AI and education, which is about bringing together districts, higher ed partners, ed tech partners, and other folks together in the room to also have these conversations together, to share what we're learning, to share what's working, to create partnerships so that we're able to accelerate progress and make sure that we're looking at adoption equitably across the regions that we're working with. So we don't have some schools or districts or partners that are able to run far ahead because they have the resources and others that don't and are trying to figure out where to start. How do we learn from each other in spaces like this about what's really been effective and what's actually working kind of nuts and bolts for your working group or for your co-design process or for the guardrails that you've put in place so that we're all moving quick for students and for educators to really give them access to the skills and support that they need.
I love that point about learning from each other at scale and being able to overcome some of the challenges or barriers that individual districts might face, like facing this work, but by bringing them all together. I'm wondering, and this is open to the whole group, right? Like as you all are entering into spaces where you're having these conversations, where you're fostering cross-district collaboration, or like collaborating with other peers, colleagues on these on the lessons that you're learning or the problems of practice that you're approaching, can you share like one aha moment around AI implementation, either at the school district level, the leadership level? Like what's something that has come out of collaboration that would not necessarily have come out of like individual work that you saw? Like I'm wondering if there's an example of like this magic sauce. We believe that collaboration is the key, right? But like what comes out or what examples can you all share?
One example I would share just to start us off in the conversation is in those co-design processes with educators and students together in conversation. I think those are crucial to building kind of shared mindsets because when we ask for those conversations to happen together about cheating, for example, you actually realize that the perspectives of the students and the educators are much closer together than what people are assuming. And that opens up a whole mindset of what is possible for us together and moves us through that barrier. And so we've had several situations where elevating and facilitating those conversations has really kind of blown open the openness and the readiness for those co-design and experimentation in designing what the use cases in particular school settings look like once we've been able to see how closely aligned our values and priorities are as both educators and learners.
I think for us, sorry, Kelly, I saw you unmute at the same time. I think for us, it's allowed more cross-divisional at the district office level and then down into school sites, just conversation that maybe would not have popped up before because everybody has their own kind of lens and they really have their own ideas. And I think the aha moment for me was a couple months ago. Business services was talking about their management days this summer. They want to provide PD and things like that. And AI was kind of brought up, and I happened to be sitting in the room and I didn't say anything at the moment. And then came back to my office and I was like, I got to get in there. I got to get in there and make sure that, you know, what business services is hearing is the message, right? And that they understand the education piece too, but then have context for them. And I read a quote this morning that kind of fits perfectly with this whole AI journey that we've been on. You don't need to do it perfectly, you just need to do it. And that really stuck with me about 3 hours ago when I read it. Like we didn't come into this knowing where we would end up today. And if Kelly and Tiffany from like 2 years ago, we're talking to Kelly and Tiffany now, like completely different lenses of what we thought we needed to do and where we ended up with, you know, a guidance that is really strong and grounded in future learning. But it's the conversations and those kind of authentic moments that pop up that have been the biggest takeaway for me.
Kelly, I was going to give you just a moment. Oh, and I've got lots of posts coming up.
No, I was going to give Kelly a moment too because I thought she was going to go.
I was trying not to take up too much airtime.
No, please.
So I'll say, I shared the example of Peninsula. There's a school district in Wisconsin that they're adding a 6-week unit on prompt writing to their senior English class. So I think in this cross collaboration, we get to hear a lot of the great ideas, right? Which will ultimately change what instruction and hopefully what teaching and learning looks like in the classroom. But I think one of the biggest aha moments I had, and I got to give Richard Collada credit for this, is he was talking about just the use of AI in education, right? And I want to anchor this in the idea of what we talked about initially with Tiffany's schedule being so overburdened and so overwhelming that she really intentionally, as did I, made efforts to keep AI at the top. So now I think what's happened, my concern is that teachers have learned how to use AI for grading or how to use it to write a lesson plan, right? And it's easing some of their workload a little bit. And there's a contentment with that. Like, I'm using AI, check the box, I'm doing it. My workload is lighter, which is great. I want their workload to be lighter. If I could make every teacher's workload lighter, I would do that. But that is not the use of AI that is going to transform teaching and learning. That's just operational efficiency, which is great. Um, Richard's analogy that I referred to a bit earlier was an airplane flying, right? And so it's fine if you're a passenger on the plane and you're fascinated with an airplane flying and you don't really understand aerodynamics and you don't really know how it all works. And so you think it's just kind of magical that you're on this plane and it's flying through the air. That's fine if you're a passenger. You don't want the pilot to feel that way. You want the pilot to know why it works, how it works, and what to do if something goes wrong. That's what I want for teachers. I don't want them to just be like, oh, AI is this really cool thing, and I know how to scratch the surface and use it. We want to build deep capacity because our teachers are phenomenal. And if we'll do the work to build the capacity, they will figure out how to transform teaching and learning and do amazing things that go back to what I said initially, that it magnifies the creativity and the intelligence of our students, that they'll be able to do things they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And that was really an aha moment for me.
I love that. I'm going to build on that a little bit. Actually, I just had an experience yesterday. I was with my nephew and he had his entire Pokemon binder out. And I want to sort of like reference this in. I think that we have such a generational divide these days. I think just an understanding of how people interact with our world. And I think a lot of times, when we think about AI, yes, it has arrived for us front facing, but I think it's so important for people to recognize that for the past 15 years minimum, these algorithms have been in control of how our young people are growing up, right? And I think when we tell people that this is so new and this is just here, there is an element there where we let people off the hook. And I think every single time we do that, you get one more class that graduates. It's important for us to remember we have now had 3 graduating classes from high school and college that have graduated with people who are just like, oh, well, we need more time. We need to like build our learner profile and we need to spend time in this and we need to spend time in that. Every single moment you wait is another day that a kid is left vulnerable to the algorithms and these companies that have been doing this for a very, very, very long time. And so it's really interesting to me. So like yesterday, my nephew was showing me his Pokemon binder. And, I think, my sister was like, oh, this obsession with Pokemon. And I was like, okay, I know nothing about Pokemon. So like, as he's talking, I'm like on ChatGPT, like, what is Charizard? What is this Pokemon? What is da da da? And ChatGPT gave me the most insane reality check. It was insane. It literally like it was like, this is not an obsession. This is an incredible learning opportunity. It is tying together. It literally went math with attack values, HP, energy costs, reading, probability, strategy, and even empathy, caring for their collection and learning how to negotiate with their friends in a trade. And I was just like, wow. And so to me, when I think about collaboration and I think about the power of AI, to tie it back into your question, it is, And this is to me the opportunity AI gives every human. Can you even be present enough to hear what the person and people in front of you are saying? Because when people are so stressed, you're just like, okay, yes, I'll get to that later. Like, yes, 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 I hear you. Yes, I'm just going to get that. But your mind is in a completely different place. And I think that presence that we have is such a human advantage. Right now, at least, your AI tools cannot hear the unspoken in your classrooms and in your spaces and in your meetings. They cannot know, like, oh, like that kid is showing me his Pokemon binder and whatnot. Like, and it was just so interesting to me. So I feel like that is an opportunity, especially at a time when we know that algorithms have really left young boys really vulnerable. You know, like I'm a really big, like I listen to a lot of what Scott Galloway says, and I think this crisis for like, I think it's both young girls and young boys that they're facing, like, we have the tools that literally tomorrow allow you to take step one. So I like really hope everybody knows, like, you don't have to wait a year to come up with your perfect plan and vision, because that is 1 year too late for the kids that are sitting in front of you. And I'm telling you all of this to tie it back to their RISE framework, because if there was one piece that I would really lean into and take a look at from that document, it is the ability to encourage young people to make decisions. There are a lot these days around like stoplights, let's monitor the kids, let's do this. But again, when they're outside in their algorithm vulnerable world, there are no monitoring systems and there are no people who are helping them navigate this. And so that is such a responsibility I think we hold right now in this moment. No matter how you want to start that conversation, no matter how you want to do it, that collaboration begins with whoever is in your circle, whether it's in a meeting with 5 people, whether it's in a classroom with 30 kids, like that is your circle of influence. Start there, focus there, and organically, like, you know, Tiffany and Kelly shared, the work will evolve and you will have those insights to bring to the table.
And I'll just add really quick, Saba, these kids, it's not just the RISE framework for today, learning how to make decisions. They're going to be the leaders of tomorrow in an AI-rich world. And I want them to make ethical decisions around AI. So I feel, again, that imperative to teach them how to do that.
For sure. Jessica, I saw you come off mute as well at one point. Would you like to add in here?
Um, yeah, there's been such rich conversation and follow up here, many of the things I would touch on. But what I want to emphasize, I think, is where Saba has led us and where we landed, which is so many of our systems going through this process are still at the very early phases of AI literacy and exposure for educators. And we literally cannot wait one more day to accelerate through what that looks like wherever we're starting and be able to start thinking about what does this mean to actually teach students how to responsibly have AI literacy and fluency? How does it look to prepare them for what the workforce is asking of them into the future? And if we haven't started those conversations with our educators, start tomorrow with some of these resources and prompts that you've had today. And if you haven't started it with your students, be ready to do that as you're coming back in the fall. One of our key working norms when we do sessions is expect non-closure around AI, and knowing that it's really a process and embracing it as a process and setting it up as a process, and starting where you are and building from there. I think it's such an important takeaway to this theme that we've had in the past couple minutes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. I'm going to turn this over to the audience Q&A. I hate to end the conversation there, but we do have some really great questions that folks have submitted. So the first one is going to be around like this AI exploration. Does it present any sort of like open willingness to explore competency-based learning or other instructional design processes, right? We're talking about transforming how we do teaching and learning. Is the grammar of schooling changing as we're like having conversations with this, or do we really feel like that's I think we've spoken a little bit to it in terms of like teachers, you know, are figuring that out as they're going. But I'm wondering, as you have been working with folks, are you seeing interest in or an open willingness to explore those more student-centered transformational instructional practices? And that's to the whole group.
I can see for us at LEAP, personalized learning as the core of what we're doing, and driving personalized competency-based approaches is the lens that we're bringing to artificial intelligence. And I think you see that in a lot of the publications and the research talking about a new potential to drive those. And so we definitely see and engage in conversations where the conversation is, what is something new or deeper than we can do that we wouldn't have been able to do before, to press the limits of what we're doing already in personalization, to go deeper on where we can drive and have systems to support competency-based learning. So I think we're continuing to push that edge of better and new focus on these. And we're taking a personalized lens, and many of our schools are, to say that's where the human-centered piece comes in. Where how do we amplify the human power of the educator and the relationship between the educator and the student with the technology? And where does the technology allow us to do some of the pieces that can go deeper in those curricular practices and the personalization, so that that human time is freed up to facilitate learning?
So I'm going to jump in here because I think Desert Sands is going to be one to watch for the next year because of the investment that they have made in their people and in their community. So like Tiffany, I'm going to hand it over to you because just yesterday you were talking about all the different layers of training that you're going to do. But this is going to tie back to what I was saying about people being more ambitious with what they ask for. One of the things we've seen right now is people have accepted very mediocre versions of AI technology in education and just, well, that's what we have right now, so that's what we're going to do. And this is the moment to be way more demanding of what your technology is going to offer you and what you should ask for from these companies. So one of the things that, and I'm very platform agnostic. The only thing I ever look for is who is giving people the opportunity to do this at scale. That's all. That's my only criteria if I care about. So don't associate my using names of companies with my support for one over another. So right now, in my opinion, the only company that's doing that is Gemini at scale. So one of the things I think, Jim, you were asking this earlier about the learning sciences. So when you look at Learn LM for how they have approached the design of Gemini, they have, integrated these 5 learning principles that you can go and read about. And one of the things that I think really got missed in their latest update was inside of Google Classroom, you can now tag learning goals. And right now they have like sort of like pre-designed ones like the ISTE standards and like there's all these other ones that are out there, but you can actually begin to submit in your own ones. Now, if you think about all of the people who might be in that ecosystem for using Google Classroom, that one element of I'm going to tag a learning goal. And one of the things that that does over time is it actually draws out the analytics for how people are progressing in that space. Now, you think about like competency-based learning, teaching people that, doing all of those things. That Gemini platform has actually introduced the beginnings of being able to do a lot of heavy lifting for how we begin approaching that in this moment. And then you sort of think about, okay, well, the one we always go back to, because I feel like we said deeper learning so much, is Jel Mehta and Sarah Fine in their book, In Search of Deeper Learning. Their like really big conclusion was like, there are pockets of excellence in every single school. There is innovation at scale pretty much nowhere. Right. So one of the things that I think, in these next 6 months, if you have an opportunity to do, is double down in your organization and finding those pockets of excellence and looking at, okay, what is the training data that went into this? How do we capitalize on that knowledge? How do we bucket up that knowledge and now sort of like create these like digital teammates that we can give at scale? I can't take that one amazing teacher and put them in front of 5,000 kids or give them to every 30 teachers in this organization to go and support them in everything they do. But I can absolutely do that with the AI technology that I have today. And so that is really the work now that, like, when Tiffany talks about moving from that phase 1 to phase 2, that they'll be doing. But I'm going to let her talk about how she's thinking about training everybody because it's so strategic.
Yeah, thanks. So we took a long time to really start talking about tools. We did the AI playground and just gave people a smattering of tools, but we on purpose stayed away from any big purchase. We did a pilot and kind of let that fizzle out, but intentionally we waited. One, to cement the human-centered, human first in the decision making, but then we were also waiting. We were waiting to see kind of what would play out. We are a Google district, and so Gemini was always on the table. And as Gemini has kind of been being refined and they're really focusing on workspace and the incorporation of Gemini into workspace, we did invest in Gemini for our staff. And so the ISTE launch that they just last week, I think, maybe the week before, put out is like pages and pages of tools. A lot of them are free. That are embedded now into Workspace and then into Google Classroom. So when you think about redesigning teaching and learning, they're embedded in the tools that our staff is already using. And so Saba and I had a conversation yesterday about, okay, there's all these things, and I don't want to fire hose them at people because they're going to get lost. I got lost in the document, had to print it and write notes because it's a lot, and it's a lot to take in. And I really, we've been intentional so far, and I don't want to walk away from that. And so we have a series of trainings that we're going to roll out from district office personnel to project facilitators to instructional coaches to principals. But then also we're going to highlight our people, and we're going to highlight the excellence that's happening out in classrooms and out at school sites and in departments across the district. And so we're gonna launch a podcast and some webinars, and we're gonna start our podcast with kind of a big picture idea to kind of frame it around, big picture district thinking, and then we're gonna highlight those stories and those real world scenarios, because I can talk all day about things that I'm seeing, but it is way more valuable and way more intentional to hear it from the people who are doing the work and interacting with kids and are kind of the boots on the ground. And so we're really investing in, like Saba said, investing in our people this year, and then also turning around and we're going to highlight the work that they're doing. We have some counselors at one of our high schools who created a little bot that lives on their counseling website so that parents can ask questions. We have some principals who are integrating some custom gems with their math standards and looking at how to support teachers that way. We have teachers who are just so excited about AI and are diving in, and one of them is getting her doctorate, and her thesis is all around AI and education. So we've got some pretty amazing things happening here that we're just going to highlight and invest in our people. So I would say look for the people who are already kind of your forefront and the front runners, and highlight what they're doing to inspire others.
Absolutely. And I hate to cut the conversation short. You all are so thoughtful and approaching this work from such different places and have such great insights. But I do want to make sure that we have a quick moment to just close out. One thing that I would like to share is that we have recently launched some tools at the Learning Accelerator, a full resource suite that includes a vision, an anchor white paper that articulates a vision for what AI might make possible in K-12. Like, what does that systems level transformation look like? Personalized learning at scale. What does it look like to really overcome barriers to enable systems transformation? Looks like my screen stopped sharing. There we go. Supported by 2 starting smart guides for both state and local education agency leaders. So folks who are looking to get started, looking for examples for resources, we've got LEAP, we've got Desert Sands, and Dr. Keedwai's work all focused or all highlighted in there. And then what does it look like to go from starting smart to really organizing around a sector-wide transformational leap, right? Like, what are the things that you can start doing if you're on the leading edge, if you're looking for networks, if you're starting to build community around this? How do we go from starting with AI to really like taking that first step that our panelists encouraged us to take today toward moving in the direction that we need to be moving for students in the long term? All of those are going to be accessible at the link shared in the chat. Our panelists are also, or have also shared several resources. So if you'd like to learn any more about, or if you'd like to learn more about the work that they're doing, LEAP is doing great work bringing networks together, organizations together to learn and tackle these problems in community. Desert Sands has their AI guidance and their AI integration roadmap that speaks a little bit more to what they're doing. And then Dr. Keedwai has lots of great things, including the podcast, the free course to help you get started, and then an experience called the AI Power Circle. So please check those out. We'll be dropping those links in the chat as well. I want to end on a thank you to all of our panelists, to all of our folks here on the call. Great work. I know that as I was like putting together these resources, it was great to see what you all are doing. And I just really appreciate the time today, the hour to go into this conversation. I know we could talk literally for days on end about this, and that is what all of us do professionally. And so I just appreciate the time and the space to be able to pick your brains, and I'm very sad that we couldn't go a little bit deeper on some of those questions, but do appreciate it. Any questions that were left unanswered from the chat, we will add those to a follow-up email with all of these resources as well. And then one final closeout, if you'd like to stay connected with us at the Learning Accelerator, here's our social media. You can sign up for our newsletter. We'll continue to share our new insights and updates from the field as we're continuing along with this exponential learning initiative. Take care, you all. We'll see you next time.